Welcome back to the Horror Hub. Let's jump right into the story. It all started when I first moved into my new apartment. I had always been a bit superstitious, but I never believed in the old wives' tale about mirrors being portals to another dimension. But as soon as I hung my first mirror in the living room, I knew something was off. I would often catch glimpses of movement in the reflection, but when I turned around to look, there was nothing there. I shrugged it off as my imagination playing tricks on me. But as the days passed, the movement became more pronounced, and I could swear I saw someone standing behind me in the mirror. I tried to ignore it, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to shake off the feeling of being watched. Every time I walked by the mirror, I couldn't help but steal a glance, half expecting to see someone staring back at me. But the reflection was always empty. It wasn't until one night when I was alone in the apartment that everything changed. I was getting ready for bed when I heard a noise coming from the living room. I assumed it was just my imagination, but the noise persisted. I reluctantly got out of bed and made my way to the living room. As I entered the room, I saw a figure standing in front of the mirror. My heart raced as I realized that the figure was not a reflection, but an actual person. I was paralyzed with fear as the figure slowly turned to face me. It was a woman, and she looked exactly like me. She was dressed in the same clothes I had worn earlier that day, and her hair was styled in the same way as mine. She stared at me with empty eyes and a sinister grin on her face. I couldn't move, and I couldn't speak. I was trapped in a nightmare, and there was no way to wake up. The woman began to move towards me, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. But just as she was about to reach me, she suddenly disappeared. I was alone in the room once again. I stumbled back to my bedroom and locked the door, too terrified to move. The next day, I tried to make sense of what had happened. I knew it couldn't have been real, but the memory of the woman was burned into my mind. I couldn't shake off the feeling that she was still with me, watching me. I tried to ignore it, but the woman continued to appear in the mirror. Every time I walked by, I could see her reflection staring back at me. I knew I had to do something before I lost my mind. I began researching the legends of mirrors and their supposed connections to other dimensions. I found stories of people who had been trapped in mirrors, never to return. I read about spirits and demons who used mirrors as a portal to our world. But no matter how much I researched, I couldn't find a way to banish the woman from my mirror. She seemed to be getting stronger, appearing more often and staying for longer periods of time. I was at a loss, and I didn't know what to do. I started to feel like I was going crazy. I couldn't sleep at night, and I was constantly on edge. I couldn't even look at the mirror anymore, but I knew she was still there, waiting for me. I began to withdraw from my friends and family, too scared to tell them about what was happening. I knew they wouldn't believe me, and I didn't want to be labeled as crazy. But it was getting harder and harder to keep it a secret. The woman was starting to appear in other mirrors in my apartment, and I couldn't escape her. I would see her reflection in the bathroom mirror when I was getting ready in the morning, and I would catch glimpses of her in the windows when I was walking down the street. I knew I had to take action before it was too late. I decided to seek out a professional, a psychic who specialized in dealing with spirits and other entities. She agreed to help me, and together we performed a ritual to banish the woman from my mirror. The ritual was intense and exhausting, but it seemed to work. The woman stopped appearing in my mirrors, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I thought it was over, and I could finally move on. But that sense of relief was short-lived. It wasn't long before I started to notice strange occurrences happening in my apartment. Objects would be moved or disappear without explanation, and I would hear strange noises coming from the living room. I knew it couldn't be the woman, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was still with me. I started to feel like I was being watched again, and I couldn't escape the feeling of dread that hung over me. I decided to consult with the psychic again, and she revealed that the ritual we had performed had only temporarily banished the woman. The entity was still with me, and she was determined to stay. The psychic warned me that the woman was not a spirit, but a demon that had taken on my form. It had been waiting for a way to cross over into our world, and my mirror had provided the perfect opportunity. I was horrified. I knew I had to find a way to banish the demon permanently, but I didn't know how. The psychic told me that it would take a powerful exorcism to rid me of the demon, but it would be dangerous and potentially deadly. I knew I had to take the risk. I couldn't live with the demon inside of me any longer. I agreed to the exorcism, and the psychic began to prepare. The exorcism was the most terrifying experience of my life. The demon fought back with all its power, but in the end, it was banished back to its own dimension. I was finally free. The demon was gone, or so I thought. I moved out of that apartment, but the memories of that demon still haunt me to this day. I learned the hard way that some legends and old wives' tales are not just myths, and it's better to be cautious and always listen to your gut feeling. However, it wasn't long before I started to notice strange occurrences happening in my new home. Objects would be moved or disappear without explanation, and I would hear strange noises coming from the living room. I knew it couldn't be the woman, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was still with me. I started to feel like I was being watched again, and I couldn't escape the feeling of dread that hung over me. I decided to consult with the psychic again, and she revealed the shocking truth. The exorcism we had performed hadn't banished the demon permanently. It had only sent it back to its own dimension temporarily. The demon had found a way back, and it was now stronger and more determined to possess me. The psychic warned me that it would take a much more powerful exorcism to rid me of the demon this time, and the risk of not surviving it was high. I knew I had no choice but to try it again, but the fear of losing my life was overwhelming. The second exorcism was even more intense and terrifying than the first. The demon fought back with all its power, and it seemed like it would never end. But in the end, I emerged victorious. The demon was finally banished back to its own dimension, and I was free. But the victory was short-lived. I soon realized that the demon had left a part of itself inside of me. It had embedded itself deep within my mind, and it could come back at any time. I was forever changed, and I knew I would never be the same again. I was cursed, and the demon would always be a part of me. From that day on, I lived in constant fear, always waiting for the demon to come back and possess me once again. I knew that it was only a matter of time before it would return, and I would have to face it once more. And that thought alone was the scariest thing of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a like. Thanks for watching.